All right, so how do you create a layer? What is a layer? Basically, a layer is one pad which you can hit and it will trigger several sounds. Not only will it trigger several sounds, but you have the ability to trigger different sounds at different velocity levels. That is, if I hit the pad softly, I trigger one sample. If I hit it medium, I trigger a different sample. If I hit it hard, I trigger a third sample. If I hit it a little harder, I trigger a different sample, all the way up to 16 samples. 16 layers you can have, and you can have those different layers live at different velocities. So let me show you how to do it. It's very, very simple, very straightforward. All right, first you got to create a new kit. All right, so here I am. I got my new kit going. I'm in kit mode, and I'm going to hit my new soft key, and there's my new kit. All right, so now think about these buttons right here. Normally, if you've been in pattern mode and you've been messing around with the tracks, then you're used to looking at these as track buttons. But in the kit mode, they're actually layer buttons. So you see, here's where my layer is right here. And if I hit these different buttons, I can quickly and easily go to the next layer. So, you know, real nice workflow thing as far as you going to the next layer and being able to get there quickly, and you can quickly see what's on each layer. So let's listen to these layers as I'm building them, right? All right, so here's my first layer, and I'm going to get a sample for this first layer. And I'm going to pull this sample called Indian. All right, so let's listen. Whichever pad is highlighted is the pad that it's going to play back on, and whichever button is selected, that's going to be a layer. So let's go to the second layer, and now let's add another one, another sample. Now notice when I add this second sample, Indian 2, it's in a different pitch, in a different octave, but they both play together from the same pad. All right, so how do you do your velocities? Let me show you. All right, so I'm going to go back to layer 1, and you want to come down here to your more key, and you want to tap it until you get all the way out to something called start velocity and end velocity. It'll look like start VEL, end VEL. This is basically how loud you have to tap the pad in order to trigger the particular sample that's on that pad. Remember, we're on layer 1 and we're on the C pad, right? So your start velocity is the softest sound at which you can trigger that pad, which is 0. The full range is 0 to 127. So we see that we've got 0 to 127, which means that in any one of those velocities, 0 through 127, which is the full range, we're going to trigger this pad. So right now, it has no velocity sensitivity. It will not be triggered. It'll be triggered the same with a low sound as it will with a loud sound, right? But we got 2 layers in there. So how do we make these layers overlap? We want to set it up so that this first sample, Indian 1, starts from 0 and goes up to some place, and then the second layer picks up, it might overlap, and then it goes all the way up to 127. How do we do it? Simple. Let's just go to the first layer, and let's take that layer to go from 0, which is the soft, up to about half of that. I'm going to bring it up to about 60, 70, right? And then we're going to go to the second layer, and we're going to start the start velocity, or set the start velocity, right around the same place. Let's have it overlap a little bit. Say 64. All right. So now when we hit it softly, we hit the pad softly, we ought to just hear the first layer. We hit the pad loudly, we ought to hear the second layer. All right. Soft. Just the first layer. Harder. And then it crosses over into the second layer. All right. So that's simple. That's just 2 layers. Imagine we could do this with a second, a third, a fourth, all the way up to 16. And you can have different velocity-based performances that would trigger different samples of the same sound. Like one place where that's going to be really, really helpful is when you're dealing with percussion. When you strike a snare drum, you actually get a different sample on that same snare drum, like a live snare drum, a trap drum. If you're sampling a drum, you hit it hard, you're going to get a different sample. You know, the drum itself changes in character and in characteristic. You might be able to pull out 4 or 5 different samples from one snare drum, and then you can remap them on here, and you can create a kit that has different layers where that different sample is triggered with different velocity. That's what makes BeatThing an incredible production tool and also an incredible sound design tool, because you can go out, get your own sounds, load up your own sounds, create these velocity curves, create these layers, and really personalize and customize your internal sound set. More on that to come.